Our lives are surrounded by noise. Some are sudden and loud, and others are prolonged and blend in with the background, present, but not always perceived. And though some level of noise has always been present in the human experience, today, noise has become the great usurper. What do I mean? Noise has stolen that place of that most precious thing that we call silence. And because of that, our sanity is at risk. Let's unpack this. You and I both know that not all noise is bad. We know, for example, that the presence of noise among us might simply mean that we're leveraging the advances of technology. And other noises might simply be a wonderful sign that life is well and among us. But the problem is, what was the exception has now become the norm. And the norm has been banished. And most of us haven't even noticed. And you may not think that's a problem. You may be saying to yourself, well, I just prefer all that noise anyway. But this isn't about what you prefer. It's about what you need. And the human being needs silence. For our ancestors, it was pretty simple. Silence served multiple purposes, all of which are fundamental to who we are and how we get along in the world. Silence allowed us to hear danger. The world in which we live requires that the human being use all of our senses, listening playing a primary part. Listening allowed us to hear the other. We've always intuited that we're not the biggest mind in the room, and this is fascinating to us. So much so that since the beginning, curiosity and courage, not fear, sent us on a search to find the other. And this search began with what we see and what we hear. After a battle or a narrow escape with some beast, or an experience that deeply troubled us, silence was the privileged place for sorting through the mess.
Did I really see that?
Did I really see that?
What do I do now?
Questions like these and so many others that could hardly be articulated on the conscious level were best examined in silence. And this internal check was crucial to living another and better day because, let's face it, it was all a very high-stakes game. Silence triggered creativity. We marvel at the creative genius of our predecessors, and we often wonder, come on, I know that you have, at the seeming lack of genius in our own time. Yes, we keep moving forward with technology, and we can get really creative with each new iteration. But to truly think differently and deeply about the knowledge that's been in front of us the entire time, that is far more rare than it should be. But noise has a place in our history too, and it's worth mentioning. To put it simply, noise was the great disruptor. When noise came as the exception, we took notice. How could we not? Because it told us of the dangers without and within. It told us of an eruption of life too, both the changes in the seasons and the temperamental attitudes of the weather. Noise was necessary because it shook us all out of our reveries and said, hey, something is coming, and no matter what, you need to deal with it. But something has changed. In our time, not only has the noise-silence dynamic been inverted, but the proportions in which they interact have been altered as well. Do you know what this means? Nothing good, I assure you. Perhaps an example will help. Imagine we have a meal in front of us. Now, the meal should be the place that we derive the nutrients from. That's why it's the source. Because it's the source, it's the priority in the eating process. We not only give it more time, but we put it first as well. The dessert, however, also serves a purpose, be it pleasure or festivity, or the challenge of making something beautiful out of fondant. But if the dessert was served first and the portions given exceeded those for the meal, well, we'd have quite the bellyache. And yet this is precisely what has happened with silence. But it's no bellyache that we're feeling. Instead, it's a sickness of the mind. So I think the question we need to ask right now is, do we realize that we need this silence? And I think the answer is, yes, we do. I think on some level, even if it's only on the subconscious level, we've felt the cravings for silence for some time. I mean, look at the adults in your life. We've all seen those who crave the weekend, crave the vacation, and many just crave the little bit of silence when they put the children to bed. There's almost a desperation present. And we find this craving even in those who love their work, because you know what? It's not about the work, it's about the silence, and that silence is missing. So why would anyone avoid silence then? Why not just give yourself what you crave? I don't know if you've looked around lately, but silence is extremely difficult to come by. And for those who know how to find it, poor habits may simply be getting in the way of following through. Putting those aside, there's still one major reason why many would simply prefer to turn up the volume than stare at the stars. Silence challenges our beliefs about present danger. There's still dangers in our lives, even if we're not being pursued by a pack of wolves. And often these dangers take on the form of toxic relationships, destructive habits, and very poor life decisions. And if silence forced us to acknowledge that our poor decisions or lack of action has actually led us to a point where we're surrounded by our enemies, many of our own making, we might just have to take action, and that we're terrified of. Silence challenges the belief that we are indestructible. The very thought that I could be wounded is sobering enough, but the realization that I have been wounded, whether psychologically, emotionally, or even physically, well, that's just too much to bear. Because that would mean that that person, or that event, or that decision that I made actually left a scar on me. I've been wounded, and now I need to heal. Silence challenges our beliefs about time and the best way to use it. If I'm not always working, is that okay? Is leisure the same thing as resting? Is festivity and play valuable? And what about silence? All my life, I've heard that purposeful silence is a waste of time. And it would be far better for me if I used that time to think about my to-do list, my shopping list, or any list, actually. And oh boy, was that wrong. Silence challenges our belief about the divine. We've all heard the rabid and often incoherent rantings of the atheists of our time. And yet I can't help but think, in the depths of who I am, why is there so much beauty? Where does it come from? Why do I care so much about what is true? Are we really the height of intellect in the universe? And to all these questions, my atheist friend says, stop asking those questions. Well, we're asking anyway, because silence demands it. You'll be happy to hear that none of this is new. Men have been leveraging the benefits of silence for, I don't know, millennia. And because they have, we can learn from the men who've gone before us. Choose your time wisely. Look, some time is just better suited for silence than other time is. During these times, our attention is fuller, interruptions far less, and the reward all the greater. So the mornings, those few moments before you fall asleep, or maybe that little bit of time you get when you come home from work. Any time where you can deep dive into silence, that's what you're looking for. Go it alone. At least at first. As you begin to make silence your own again, you will undoubtedly find others who want to join you. But for now, in these early stages, trust me, you don't need all of those distractions that good friends can give. Don't add anything. At first, silence will be difficult for you, and you'll want to reach out for something, anything, to fill the void. But don't. Don't draw, don't journal, don't read an inspiring book. You need to use this time to befriend silence. And that's going to require all the attention you can muster. Find your perfect spot. There has to be at least one place in your journey so far where you have felt the pull of silence most potently. Wherever that is, if at all possible, return there. Go there often and just keep going back. Don't have any expectations. Having no plan, no itinerary for your moments of silence is key to getting the most out of the experience. So just let it happen. You might be surprised by the results. Above all, resist the urge to give up. Fight for silence in your life, because remember, silence is not what happens when the noise stops. Silence is what noise interrupts.